around.
I don't have anything to see.
Audio?
I can hear you though.
Phone.
My phone's off.
Jay,
Yes.
how
Yes.
come we only have audio?
Are we doing a pool feed, or are you guys picking up where you're at?
Audio's coming
What's
from
that?
here.
Okay, you're using this microphone for a pool feed.
Did you
Got it.
flip it after you hit start?
It's just audio now. I tested it with video.
For this significant development in a case that was brought to our attention from out of state, actually. On the 5th of November, a 5-year-old boy was the result of a parental abduction by his father, Jacob Clare. That occurred in the state of Tennessee. Several days later, or in the interactions in between then and now, Jacob's niece, Amber Clare, was also taken from Kentucky to the state of California. This was brought to our attention over time when the car being used by Mr. Clare, was located in the city of San Clemente. That car originally was abandoned. The car later was updated and associated with an aggravated kidnapping that occurred out of Tennessee, which brought that car to the attention of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Over the last several days, we've had numerous notifications and sharing of information about this incident, hopefully bringing it to the attention of local residents to locate Mr. Clare and the two juveniles, the juvenile and child who was with him. I'm proud to announce that early this morning, as a result of the intervention of one of our residents, the three were located in South Orange County. Jacob Clare was taken into custody as a result of a warrant that was in the system from the Texas Bureau of Investigations for aggravated kidnapping. Both children were safely brought into our custody as well, and we brought to resolution something that we hoped would happen, which is a safe return eventually, later tonight, of both the children to their parents, which that reunification is currently being planned. I can tell you that Mr. Clare, Jacob Clare, 35 of Kentucky, is being interviewed by our investigators. That investigation is ongoing, and if there are local charges that will be brought, that has not yet been determined, but we're looking at all angles as a result of his interactions while in the state of California. The warrant is out of the state of Tennessee. He will be kept in custody in Orange County Jail pending extradition back to the state of Tennessee to face charges for aggravated kidnapping, which is the charge that was listed on the warrant for Mr. Clare. These circumstances, positive outcomes, don't happen without the action and intervention of residents. We rely on our residents to be co-producers of safety in Orange County. Going back to Sir Edward Peel, the community is the police and the police is the community. It takes people to act out and get involved in order to bring these things to positive resolution. And I'd like to say a special thank you to the lady, Julia Bonin, who was responsible for acting on her intuition and bringing the information to our attention that led us to the location of Mr. Clare at Doheny State Beach. And without that, I'm sure he would have hopefully been located, but he was located and brought those children back safely into our custody to be reunited with their parents. So my story is short. I'll ask, how about if you hear from Ms. Bonin first, and then I'll come back up and answer questions at that time. So I'd like to introduce Julia Bonin. And I'm going to give her a round of applause. And I'm sorry to help you out there.
Hi, my name is Julia Bonin, and I live in Dana Point, just one town north of San Clemente. And as nervous as I am to be up here, I just want to say to everybody that you just have to trust your instinct and your gut when you see these things, because I almost didn't act upon it. I was driving my son to school, to middle school, and saw the 3 individuals, and I had seen on social media their photos in our town, and thought when I first saw them that there's no way that they were still here. They had to have been, left town already, and they weren't still in the area. I saw it on friends' social media pages. All of our community was sharing it. I follow OC Sheriff Department, and I continued to take my son to school with that instinct that it was them, and I drove another half mile, and as we pulled up to school where I was supposed to be volunteering this morning, I looked at my son and I said, I have to go back. I think it might be them, and I have to make sure. So I dropped him off at school and turned around and headed back north and parked and got out of my car and took a photo and called dispatch and reported what it was. And they said thank you after they connected me to the Doheny State Park Police. And I continued then after to head back to school to volunteer, and again turned back around because I thought I can't leave. I have to make sure that I follow them and wait until I know that whether it is or not. And just 10 or 15 minutes later, I received another phone call for me to meet where they were, and they had them in custody. And it was just a really good feeling. So I have children of my own, and I would want somebody to do the same. So that's my story and how it came about.
Julia, what was it about them that made you realize, what were they doing? How were they acting?
There was a blurry picture that was put out this morning from the OC Sheriff, I think. I mean, it's been going around with other people, but it was pretty much the same image. She was holding the little boy's hand, and he had a shovel in his other hand. And the dad was, much taller, but he also, struck me because he had a sweatshirt on and a hat and sunglasses and camo pants, and it was strikingly similar to the images that were put out. So,
Julie, was there anything about their interactions that was unusual, or is it just pretty?
no, I was actually apologetic when I called dispatch because I wasn't, I had a feeling that it was, but there was nothing abusive or, the kid he looked happy, Noah looked happy and just skipping along, and so.
Just where you were and where they were when you saw them and what they were doing?
Originally when I saw they were just walking, they didn't have the backpacks that I had originally seen in the photos. They were walking northbound on PCH. There's like a little sidewalk area, and when I first saw them, and then when I came back probably 10 minutes after I dropped my son off, they had entered the state park, Doheny State Beach right there, and that's when there's a separation with a train track and a fence from where I was. So they continued to head north, but I was on the other side of the tracks, just trying to keep visual of them.
You know about where on PCH? Is that kind of where the curves around, right?
Right between Palisades Drive and Beach Road, right there.
And so they didn't have their backpacks. It looked like you didn't know where they were coming from or where they were going.
No, just heading north.
Were you worried at all when you were watching them because they did put out that he might be armed?
Yeah, I mean, I took a picture and was a little bit, I felt like I had that barrier, but I didn't approach or say anything or, but have to make the phone call and let let the detectives and the sheriffs do their job and state police, and it was a really neat, everybody was kind and helpful and appreciative, so.
So were you following in your car? Is that how that worked?
I was in my car and then parked and then got out and I was on the sidewalk. But again, there was a fence and a train track, and then where they were there was a divide between us. So there was quite a bit of space.
You know, most people don't act on their instincts. Why did you?
Because I have children myself, and I would want them, we have constant conversations with my own children just about things at school and watching out for each other and friends, and when you have an instinct like that, you can't, like my friend said, I would have regretted it had I not turned around. I just would have lingered with me. There's been times before where you think you see something and you don't say anything and you kind of wonder, but this feeling just didn't go away. It was very much instinctual and very much a gut feeling that it stayed with me. I tried to leave a couple times even after I reported it, and it just, my stomach, the pit in my stomach was just there.
Have you spoken with their families back in Tennessee and Kentucky yet? Has there been?
No, not yet. But I just know that mom's probably can't wait to hug her baby. So.
Around what time was this? Probably 7, 8 in the morning?
I believe it was about 8:50 when I called. The first sighting was probably about a little before 8:40 maybe.
And did they have their backs to you when you took the picture? Were you worried about them seeing you?
Yeah, it was as they passed by. But again, I wasn't up close. It was more, and then I did the comparison of the picture that I saw after I reported it, because I just kept questioning myself. But when I pulled them both up on my phone, you can see the resemblance.
Did you hold it up, or were you kind of just like acting like you're on the phone taking the picture?
Just held it up. There, I wasn't right on them, so it was more like of a zoom in on them.
Did you say you were on the beach at that time when you last saw?
At Doheny, there is, it's like a state park and then a parking lot. So it was walking along, and then, yes. So when I pulled into the parking lot, Noah was playing in the sand with one of the deputies. So.
What was the feeling when you found out you were right?
I couldn't stop shaking and tearing up. I just wanted to go hug him, but I didn't, because some strange lady running across just saying, we did it. But I was thankful and just grateful that I followed my instinct.
So you stuck around and watched the arrest and everything?
He was already in custody when I came into the parking lot. It was a very peaceful arrest, and there wasn't, and then the detectives came and just gave my statement to whoever needed it, and then they released me after about an hour. But I just sat on the beach and watched the waves, and it couldn't have been more beautiful moment right there. That
And none of them seemed panicked. None of them seemed worried, anger, otherwise.
No, not that I saw.
And what were the girl and Noah acting like after the dad was arrested?
Speak on all of this.
Let's wait on that. Sure.
Yeah. They were in good spirits, so.
Were you tempted to interrupt them at all? Was there any temptation before you called in? Did you toy with the idea of approaching him?
No.
Because you knew that he had been potentially armed?
I had seen that, but also I had an instinct that it was them, but I called and got a hold of somebody fairly quickly, and I could see they connected me right away with the state park. So I knew that I saw those members there, and then I saw the sheriff's department pretty quick on the scene. So I just felt like if I tried to say anything, it would have caused disruption. I didn't want them to flee or, do something that would hurt the children. So.
Are you gonna hold the phone up with the picture on it that you took?
I don't have my phone. No.
Sheriff Barnes, we had our signal drops, so can we get there's people watching live right now.
Sure.
Can we get, and I apologize you guys, but our signal
Thank you.
completely dropped out. And
We'll
there's
both-
people in Tennessee.
Yes, so to reiterate the start of our conference for those now just gone live on Facebook Live. Earlier this morning, as a result of an anonymous tip from a Good Samaritan in South Orange County, we were able to locate Jacob Clare, 35, of the state of Kentucky, with 2 children, Noah, 3, who is his biological son, and Amber Clare, who is 16, who is his niece. They were brought to our attention as a result of information from the Texas Bureau of Investigations. His vehicle was located earlier in the week. That vehicle had been updated to be associated with Mr. Clare, who has a warrant in the system for aggravated kidnapping. As a result of that being put into the national system, that vehicle that was then brought to the attention of law enforcement and brought our interaction into this incident. The Texas Bureau of Investigation remains the lead investigating agency on this case. We are in the process of interviewing the children. They are both safe and healthy. I want to reiterate that. They're both safe and healthy, but we want to go through the protocols to investigate thoroughly. We have not charged Mr. Clare with any local charges. If there are any criminal activities that took place by Mr. Clare, we will then evaluate the filing of criminal charges against him at that time. Mr. Clare remains in our custody on the warrant out of Tennessee, pending extradition back to that state. The parents of both Noah and Amber are probably on their way to California now to reunite with both of their children, and we want to obviously reunite them with their children as quickly as possible. I want to thank once again the Texas Bureau of Investigation for their cooperation with us on this case. We're happy to have helped in every way that we could. Also, the California State Park Police, who was also essential in responding to and apprehending Mr. Clare on the beach. And I'll take any questions you may have of me.
Were they the first, the state police, park police, were they first to make contact with him?
No, I think it was probably, we got there about the same time. But you don't know, and obviously you send everybody you can, and I think that we were all there about the same time.
What was his demeanor with law enforcement once you made contact?
I think he was cooperative.
Sheriff, there was one disconnect along the way. The car found at the outlets, towed, you're not notified. That window, did that create issues?
The reason there was a window or a gap is the car was towed as a private person's tow. It was left abandoned for 48 hours on private property. That's not uncommon. And it was towed and stored. It wasn't until that license plate was associated with the aggravated assault charge on the 16th that then entered that plate an associated vehicle with a criminal violation that then brought it to our attention and then brought us into intervention.
And just to confirm, parents are coming here?
Yes, the parents are, my understanding is they are we're hoping to reunite both Noah and Amber with their parents later tonight.
Where are they
Here.
now? I mean, you haven't told us exactly where Noah and Amber right now.
Yeah, they're with us. We're with them, and we have appropriate services with them to support them. And we're going through an appropriate intervention with them, and we have protocols in place for doing that. But they're with our staff, and we have support staff that comes in to assist us with that as well.
And some of the reports out of Tennessee said he should be considered armed and dangerous. Was he armed? Was there any? And then why was that put out there that he might be armed and dangerous?
That was information provided by the state of Tennessee. That's still pending further investigation. They are actively investigating this case, so we want to obviously complement anything they do, but it's at the direction of the state of Tennessee that we're acting at this point, short of any local charges. And as of now, there aren't any, but that doesn't mean there won't be. But we're acting really at their direction on how we're furthering the investigation.
And she said they didn't have their backpacks with them. Did you see, were they camping on the beach somewhere? Or did they have a hotel room? Do you have any idea? Did you find their belongings that they were seen in those other pictures?
I don't have an answer to that, Chip. I apologize. We were more focused on the children. We do know they did not have their backpacks with them when we located them, and they're brought back into safety. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. The extradition process of Jacob Clare, what's the timeline for his extradition right now?
The timeline for the extradition is dependent on 2 factors. If he waives extradition, it's pretty expeditious and can happen within a matter of days. If he challenges the extradition, then there's a process locally that he has to go through hearings, and that might delay his extradition back to Tennessee. But either way, he is going to go back to Tennessee. It's just the timing of it. It could be within a few days, or it could be within a few weeks.
And you sort of, we were talking to Julia about it before, but when the kids were separated from their father was arrested,
So the question was the demeanor of the children, and it was not, it wasn't a violent encounter, I can say that. Both are not his children. One is his niece, Amber is his niece, and his son Noah is biological. He's 3 years old. I'm sorry, I said he's 5. He's 3 years old. I can imagine it's probably a little traumatic for kids to be separated from a parent, and I'm sure it was traumatic being separated for Noah being separated from his mother and family, and probably the same for Amber. And over time, I'm sure that causes tremendous stress for families not knowing the whereabouts and safety of their kids. Once that happens, we bring in appropriate resource to make sure they feel supported and safe in a safe environment. And this is not the first time we've dealt with these types of circumstances. I think we do it quite well. And we appropriately surround them and support them as appropriate to make sure that there's no more psychological harm to the children. We do not want to obviously add to that in any way. But there's protocols that we have in place.
What was it that surprised when law enforcement approached him? Like,
Was he surprised?
yeah, like,
Well, I can only imagine that he might have been, but maybe not. I don't know the mind of him. We're following up with the investigation currently. His mindset at the time, our investigators will probably find out. I can tell you that the encounter was a peaceful encounter. He was cooperative. He did not resist, and that added, obviously, probably to lessening the stress for the children. That could be much more traumatic if you have, obviously have to use force of any type to take somebody into custody, especially if it's a parent or uncle in your proximity. So it went as best as could be, I can tell you that.
Do you know roughly how many tips came in before the good one that came with the arrest?
I don't know how many tips came in, but there's only one that matters, right? And I just want to reiterate the comments by Julia. And this happens a lot, and this is why I really want to make this point of people who see something and don't act on it. You are our partners in policing the community. We have a very distinct role. I also want to highlight what Julia shared about what she did, but more importantly, what she did not do was place herself in harm while doing it. Make the contact, describe the events, let us intercede appropriately and investigate whatever might be being reported. But it could not have gone any better than how it did this morning. And I want to thank Julia for following her instincts, even when in her conscience was saying, this is probably nothing. And I think she is proud that she followed those and did the right thing.
Any information, and forgive me if you already answered this, that you've received as far as why this happened? State of mind, was there a family quarrel that lead him to do this? Any sort of, just information as far as why this happened?
That would be in the jurisdiction of the Texas Bureau of Investigations. So rather than going to the elements of the incident that happened in that state, I definitely don't want to say something that's not accurate. I'm not privileged to what the violations of law that occurred there that led to the warrant being placed in the system for Mr. Clare. So I'm not going to elaborate. I apologize. I just don't know the details of the circumstances that happened in that state. I do know that Noah is his biological son. That I do know is considered a parental abduction, which does happen at times. To be risen to the level of an aggravated kidnapping, I don't know by statute in Tennessee what that definition is. So you have to find out how that is defined in the state of Tennessee to rise to the level of an aggravated kidnapping in that state.
Sheriff, were you able to say if he was found with any weapons or not? I know Chip asked, but were you able to say?
I can't say at this point because we have not completed our part of the investigation. And there's, obviously we have Mr. Clare in our custody. We have possessions of his in our custody. There's lawful ways to gain access to those possessions. We want to make sure we follow the letter of the law before we go through and do that. So we have not validated if he had or did not have weapons in his possession, but we have his possessions, and we will go through the necessary steps to lawfully search his possessions so we don't jeopardize or taint anything that we might discover along the way.
Sheriff, you've said Texas a few times.
I'm sorry.
You meant Tennessee when you said Texas.
Tennessee. Texas is not involved, so it's Tennessee. To be clear, Mr. Clare, Jacob Clare, is a resident of the state of Kentucky. His 3-year-old son resides in the state of Tennessee, and Amber is also a resident of Kentucky, and that's his 16-year-old niece.
Can you discuss any connections Mr. Clare might have to California or anything that might sort of speak to why he chose to head this way versus any other way?
Any connections to California at this time are unknown. So if there are, it may have just been a place that he chose to go. It may have been the weather we're experiencing. Whether there's an association here, we do not know. But either way, he ended up here. And I'll tell you what's surprising to me, and I know we all see those freeway signs that say abduction alert and has details of a car. It's not very often we get to come back on the news and say, hey, guess what, we caught him. That's a really good feeling.
Final question, guys, anybody?
Did they have passports?
Again, I don't know anything about the possessions they had because we have not completed that part of the process yet.
Julie, just come up and spell your name for us real quick. If you don't mind. That's the easiest question.
It's Juliabonnin.
And you're a Dana Point resident?
Yes. Thank you.
And superhero.
Well, what grade's your kid in? You're taking this school?
Sixth.
Can you, sorry, what was the name of the school?
My son's school? Oh, I did that. So sorry.
So, 6-year-old boy or girl?
Sixth grade boy.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here. I think this is a very important outcome to a great case. Thank you.